Hello and welcome to the diplomatic series by Policypress with me, Bilun Güneş. Today I have the pleasure to being joined by Her Excellency Ambassador Torgomyan of Armenia. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting. I'm happy to be here.
It's truly a pleasure to have you here and to talk about the political movements right now, especially when the region is this active. I'd like to begin by framing Armenia's political landscape. Armenia has been through a significant political moment recently with parliamentary elections and active public debate about country's direction. How would you describe the current political climate and what are the government's main priorities?
Thank you for your question. Yes, indeed. On June 7th, Armenia held democratic, free, fair, and transparent elections, parliamentary elections that meet all the highest international standards, and for which I'm happy to congratulate all the citizens of Armenia. And this once again proves that democratic processes and the conducting of fair and free, transparent democratic elections and all these processes, they are irreversible. And the existing public debate is another indication of democracy existing in the country. Yeah. And the results of the parliamentary elections will provide opportunity to continue the government's policy as well, including in the foreign affairs. Government priorities mostly are centered on strengthening statehood, democratic government and economic modernization, while alongside with the peace agenda. So foreign policy is guided by, let's say, diversification, the balanced foreign policy, and with relations with regional and global actors. So this approach is reflected in the concept of real Armenia, represented and by the Prime Minister of Armenia, which is mostly focusing on the strengthening of internationally recognized state as the core of our policy, and with alongside with the commitment to democratic reforms, transparent elections, institutional reforms, and resilience, deepening democracy and economy, and expanding international cooperation.
Which is exactly what I wanted to also go into, because during his campaign, the question of how Armenia defines and presents its national territory generated considerable amount of discussion, including the map featured in the campaign materials. I'd like to ask you, how does the government navigate the relationship between national identity and the realities of the current relationships with its neighbors?
To be honest, I'm not sure why the question assumes contradiction or a conflict between the between the national identity and the peace process. Honestly, because there are no contradictory concepts, and there is no need to navigate between them. So at the same time, public debate, which is a very important indicator of democracy, should not be based on speculations, made up narratives, manipulations. So to keep it short, I think the best way to address this has been the holding of free, fair, democratic and transparent elections, which is the most legitimate expression of the public will.
Then let's move into one of the relationships with the neighbors, the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace progress. The initialing of a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan has been a historic step after decades of conflict. How would you describe the current state of that process, and how close are two sides to a fully ratified agreement? What do you see are the main obstacles for a durable peace?
Thank you. Indeed, as you're aware, on August 8th last year, a historic meeting has been held in Washington, D.C., and Armenia and Azerbaijan have initialed the peace agreement, and signed the joint declaration hosted by the President of the United States, and it also addressed a very important issue of unblocking communications. So after that, coming back to the question of the current situation, there has been some positive developments as well. Azerbaijan lifted restrictions on transit goods to Armenia, and in eastern Armenia has stated its readiness to ensure that the transit of trucks from Turkey to Azerbaijan and from Azerbaijan to Turkey. In December, Azerbaijan shipped petroleum products by rail to Armenia, and marking its first such export in decades, which was a tangible breakthrough in the efforts to normalize relations between the two countries, and which is also a very significant step beyond political statements also, and demonstrates a practical economic benefits of peace. So after August 8, we had also several meetings, exchanges between the leadership and high-level officials, and also the civil society, which is also very important. For example, we have Armenia-Azerbaijan Bridge of Peace initiative of the civil society, and the members of this initiative from both sides have already had several meetings, respectively in Yerevan and Baku. So it's ongoing. And regarding the obstacles, I wouldn't put the question that way because certainly there has been a history and a memory from both sides, but the peace is established at this moment. It's actually on the ground. And it needs care, everyday care, to be maintained. It's a result of joint work of two countries, and must be maintained and through stronger engagement and further institutionalization. And as officials from Armenia have continually stated, peace has no alternative. So it requires continuous political efforts and cooperation. So I would put it that way, what is needed to maintain the peace rather than concentrate on the obstacles.
And let's talk more about the collaborations that are happening and the agreements and the regional connectivity. Then there's transit corridor projects have also entered the conversation in South Caucasus. How does Armenia approach these initiatives?
Well, as we talk about peace, obviously that our region, South Caucasus, needs peace. So, but what is peace? It's a state of affairs where countries live with open borders, are connected by active economic connections, and for this connections, the infrastructure is needed. I mean, and that is why the government of Armenia has presented the Crossroad of Peace project, which is the project of unblocking all the communications in the region, and based on the principles of sovereignty of states, jurisdiction over infrastructures passing through the territories, equality and reciprocity. By the way, the TRIP project, which we will have a chance to talk about, is also derived from this project and can be a part of this project. And so, as you can see, Armenia is very committed to unblocking all the communications, and currently when countries are searching for new transport and economic opportunities, South Caucasus can also become a new transit hub between east, west, south, north.
What role do you see EU and the United States playing in consolidating this stability in the region?
European Union expresses strong support to institutionalization of peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as the normalization of relations between Turkey, in accordance with respect of principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders of all countries in the region, and also express the commitment to promoting peace, stability in the region, and connectivity in the South Caucasus. And with the United States, needless to remind about the role the United States played in the efforts of supporting peace in the region, and also normalization process and facilitation of regional connectivity initiatives. So I don't think it can be assessed negatively. Definitely, it's a positive assessment.
So let's unpack a little bit more about Armenia's political position here. Armenia has been visibly deepening its engagement with the European Union and United States. How would you describe this evolution, if you were to use that word, in Armenia's foreign policy positioning?
Well, Armenia is strengthening relations with both the European Union and the United States, and I would describe this a pursuit of diversified and balanced foreign policy of Armenia. And yes, that's true. Armenia-US relations have entered a new stage, let's say a more strategic stage, marked by the signing of strategic partnership charter, and which covers many areas of including economy, energy, security, governance, and connectivity. A further meeting on August 8 in Washington, D.C., with the adoption of a TRIP framework under the Crossroad of Peace initiative and opening prospects for regional connectivity and peace. Armenia and the United States also signed memorandums of understanding on different areas of cooperation, energy, AI, semiconductors, infrastructures, border security. We had high-level visits to Washington, D.C. and to Yerevan, and signing of the framework agreement on the TRIP implementation. So with the EU, as the same, we have elevated the relations to a strategic partnership, and it's in a very ambitious phase right now. And by the way, let me remind you about the law adopted in Armenia last year on launching the process of accession of Republic of Armenia to the European Union, and which clearly, which was a result of civic initiative, and it reflects the European aspirations of the citizens of Armenia. So with the EU, we adopted the Armenia-EU strategic agenda last December, which complements the previous, complements the SIPA agreement we had with the EU, and elevating our partnership, as I said, to a strategic level. We had recently, very recently, we had the 8th summit of the European political community in Armenia on May 4th, and which once again showed our integration pattern to the European family. A historic milestone was also particularly the Armenia-EU, first ever Armenia-EU summit held in Yerevan on May 5th. So this symbolized the elevation of our relations to a qualitatively new level. Currently, we are actively engaged in negotiations on the issue with visa liberalization. So in general, economically, the closer ties with EU would improve access to EU markets and attract investment. Also while requiring the alignment with the EU standards, of course. At the institutional level, cooperation would drive reforms in governance, rule of law, anti-corruption, strengthening transparency, and also investors' confidence, trust for the investors. For regular citizens, it provides opportunity to easier travel to Europe, and also a lot of opportunities for education exchanges. So overall, the process would strengthen resilience, economic development.
Yeah, I would like to circle back to the recent summits that have taken place in Yerevan when we're talking about maybe Albania's future steps. But maybe while we're still talking about the foreign policies, I'd like to ask Armenia maintaining important relationships with its neighbors. There are many regional partners that sit outside of the Western orbit. How does Yerevan manage that balance, getting closer with the Western allies while maintaining their doorstep neighbors?
Yerevan manages that balance through a balanced and diversified foreign policy, engaging simultaneously with Western partners, neighboring and regional actors. I think this kind of policy is very common in today's interconnected world. And this includes maintaining active relations across the South Caucasus, the Middle East, Eurasia, Far Asia, driven by geography, trade, energy security, and regional connectivity needs. So this approach is based on pragmatic cooperation and sovereign decision-making, allowing Armenia to expand partnerships without exclusive alignments.
And now I'd like to talk about Armenia-Iran relationships. There's a border being shared, and both countries have maintained a long-standing economic and political ties. Which areas of that relationship are currently most active between these two countries?
Armenia and Iran maintain traditionally close and mutually respectful relations based on centuries-old historical ties, good neighborliness, and shared interest in global stability. So Armenian authorities consistently emphasize that cooperation with Iran is an important component of Armenia's balanced and diversified foreign policy. And among others, cooperation in energy sector is very important component, as we have the gas for electricity program, under which Armenia imports Iranian natural gas and exports electricity in return. So this is one of the important directions.
And just yesterday we have seen United States and Iran have now finally reaching a framework of agreement to end the conflict and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Formal signing is expected on Friday. We're all following the developments. For a country, Armenia, bordering Iran and simultaneously deepening its ties with the West, how does Yerevan assess this moment?
Our Prime Minister has already welcomed this development officially. And of course, and during all this time, we have emphasized the importance of swift and peaceful resolution of the situation, as well as the efforts in that direction. So naturally, as a country in this region, we are very interested in peace and stability in the region.
Now, let's talk about another country and another engagement of normalization processes. And as you may have noticed, I'm slowly taking us towards Cyprus. I'd now like to talk about Turkey. Armenia and Turkey have been engaged in a quiet normalization process. How would you and Yerevan describe the current state of that dialogue?
The dialogue is ongoing, the process is ongoing within the framework of the agreements reached between the special representatives for Armenia-Turkey normalization process. Both countries have decided to simplify the visa procedures last year for diplomatic, special and service passport holders. So those passport holders on both countries will be able to obtain e-visa free of charge starting from January 1st this year. On this occasion, both Armenia and Turkey reaffirmed their commitment to continue the normalization process between the two countries, and with the goal of achieving full normalization without any preconditions.
And how...
in May, another development. In May, we welcomed Turkey's decision to lift the bans on bilateral trade with Armenia, which is another outcome of the normalization process. And this is significant from the perspective of expanding trade and ties between the business circles of both countries and promoting economic connectivity.
And yes, there have been progress, there have been steps getting taken. How realistic would that be to assume the whole progression to take place? How does that look like from Armenia's perspective?
Our dialogue with Turkey is continuous, so supported by regular contacts, regular meetings with the public being informed on each development. We see the gradual but tangible progress towards the normalization of relations, and which is stated by our officials as well, and remain hopeful that further advances will be achieved in the near future. So it's important that Armenia and Turkey publicly reaffirm their commitment to continue the normalization process and with the goal of achieving full normalization without any preconditions, as I said. So I think those steps that we mentioned, tangible steps towards the development of full-fledged and normal relations between the countries, which they can find its logical continuation through the opening of Armenia-Turkey border and the establishment of diplomatic relations at the end.
And how do you see, as Turkey has a role both in South Caucasus and Eastern Mediterranean, do you see any connection in between the progress that is happening with Armenia and Turkey widening to the region, and how that may have an effect on the wider regional politics?
Well, I think for a wider region as well, the broader regional objective is creating a more stable, predictable, cooperative neighborhood. So progress in these relations can contribute to confidence building, connectivity, economic cooperation across the wider region. So, but at the same time, each region has its own dynamics and requires dedicated dialogue and mutually acceptable solutions.
And as I'm coming closer and closer home now, Armenia, having had its own experience of communities divided by conflict, unresolved political status, how does Armenia view the situation of the Cyprus issue? How does Armenia view the situation of Turkish Cypriot community in the island?
Thank you for your question. Armenia has expressed its position on the Cyprus issue numerously. It's the position of supporting the lasting and just solution based on international law and relevant UN resolutions. Of course, as a country which has had the conflict for many years as well, the only way to achieve it, it seems like direct communication, determination, and political will of both countries. Also a commitment for peace and also the positive engagement of the international community. I think those are integral parts of reaching a lasting peace for both sides. And although every conflict has its own history, its own legal framework and realities, but so you cannot draw direct parallels, of course, but the political will and commitment to peace as well as direct communication are essential. What drew my attention when I arrived to Cyprus is the bicommunal activities and the events, the initiatives which include both communities in Cyprus, which is very commendable. And those civil society contacts, they reduce isolation between the community, they reduce escalation, they keep communication channels open. So all the technical committees, other civil initiatives, they help to resolve the daily issues, to keep the communication. So this reality was, I didn't know to this extent there is this interaction between the communities. So it's very commendable, and I think where there is the political resolution is still pending, this is very important to have the engagement of communities together.
And now let's talk about the bilateral relations we have between Armenia and Cyprus. There have been a long, not only diplomatic, but cultural ties over many years. How would you describe the current state of bilateral relations? Which are the most active areas of cooperation today between Cyprus and Armenia?
Yes, Armenia and Cyprus are bound not only by diplomatic ties, but of course with centuries of shared history and cultural affinity, genuine friendship also. Our relations are based on brotherhood, warm relations, so I felt like home since the first day I arrived to Cyprus. So we have this, besides bilateral relations, we also have a very productive and positive cooperation in multilateral platforms. We have a very active parliamentary engagement, but of course I think the important milestone was the opening of embassies in both countries, resident embassies in both countries. So the support is also very important in terms of Armenia-EU relations as well. So a lot of areas of cooperation, a big potential to boost cooperation in many levels: economic, education, tourism, high technology. So we have identified already many directions of cooperation, and we have already launched some initiatives. I hope the results of them will be soon very visible. So a lot of potential is still there.
And that being said, Cyprus is home to a historic Armenian community on the island as well. I'd like to ask, how does Armenia engage with the Armenian community in Cyprus? What does that play an extended role in the relationship between the two countries?
Yeah, that's true. Armenians have been in Cyprus since we have done a little research since 6th century, since Byzantine era, medieval times. So contributing to cultural and social life in Cyprus. And it is Armenian presence here is a part of the island's history, actually. So many Armenians have found a refuge also and could live, create, and have a sense of belonging here in Cyprus. Besides, as you know, Armenians have representative in the Parliament of Cyprus, and they are, with the support the government of Cyprus provides, they're able to preserve their identity, to have Armenian schools. As you know, Melkonian school has been operating in Cyprus for many years. So, of course, the community, which I know very well at this moment, is very prominent, and I'm very proud to have this kind of community in Cyprus. And through the community, most of the people in Cyprus recognize Armenians and Armenia. But now we try to promote also visits to Armenia due to direct flights that we have to get acquainted with Armenia as a country also, because you know the communities in different countries are very different, and each community has also different layers. So community is not one. It has different layers, and it's very interesting to know a community of each country. I have very good relations with all the representatives of the community, and of course they play a very important role for the relations between the two countries.
Talking about the relations of the two countries, let's also talk about whether there are any common ground in terms of regional security questions, both for Armenia and Cyprus. There have recently been 2 forums taking place in May. So I'd really like to ask, what is the common ground?
Well, within the international platforms, European forums, Armenia and Cyprus share common positions on the importance of sovereignty, territorial integrity, regional stability, peaceful conflict resolution, enhanced connectivity based on international law. So both countries support stronger European role in promoting security and cooperation in our regions.
I'd like to come back to what's timely maybe right now is the connection projects. If you like to talk a bit more about that part especially.
As we spoke about the Crossroads of Peace project introduced by the government of Armenia, it provides an opportunity to unblock the communications, because as you know, Armenia has been deprived of the communications for many years, and nowadays no country can develop economically with no connectivity. So this is a very important project, and TRIP project can ensure a part of this big Crossroad of Peace project. Recently, with the visit of the State Secretary Rubio, the framework agreement on this project has been signed. On TRIP project implementation has been signed. So we now have the actual opportunity to unblock the communication on both sides.
Looking ahead, Armenia has recently hosted European Political Community Summit and the Yerevan Forum within the same month in May. Looking back, how did those moments deliver for Armenia in terms of standing in Europe and its relationship with the wider region?
Thank you. Yes, the European Political Community Summit in Yerevan was a landmark demonstration of Armenians' growing role in the European political dialogue, and also I think it was a very good demonstration of its ability to host this high-level multilateral formats. It reinforced Armenia's engagement with the European partners on security, connectivity, democratic resilience, and regional stability. At the same time, it indicates Armenia's stronger integration into the European political processes and its position as a platform for broader regional dialogue involving both EU and non-EU members. Of course, it was followed by the EU-Armenia summit. Let's talk about the Yerevan Dialogue Forum also, because it is an ambitious initiative which the first one has been in 2024. This year's Yerevan Dialogue was already the third one, which is an annual forum and a platform unifying senior government representatives, private sector, NGOs, academia, youth, any other stakeholders also. And it provides a really good platform to discuss and to address mostly the pressing challenges of the moment and faced across the different regions of the world. And it was a success this year as well. I think it has it is a very ambitious initiative and has all the prerequisites for becoming a prominent annual international forum, which I wish for Yerevan Dialogue.
And going back into and tying that all with all the foreign policy developments and coming closer with the West and EU especially, there have been a lot of, with Prime Minister Pashinyan's government, there have been the pursuit of a number of institutional reforms. I'd really like to talk a bit about those reforms themselves and what they mean for Armenia.
Yes, the government has undertaken numerous reforms across many sectors of the whether it's institutional governance reforms, anti-corruption reforms, judicial sphere, and I think they have to. Many of them are connected with the EU, with the SIPA agreement, but not only. So I think this is a very important part of the development of the country, and they have to be viewed, all these reforms, as a package, as not isolated or separately, because it's a part of the system. If one of the parts does not function very well and is weak, so all the whole system cannot work properly. And I hope, and as the after the elections, the government will pursue all the reforms for the development and for the benefit of the country.
Dear Ambassador, thank you very much for joining this episode with us to the diplomatic series with Policypress.
Thank you so much for the very interesting conversation, and thank you for hosting me.